on, brother.
Hope you're feeling inspired.
Amen.
Okay? And I hope you take me up on this dare, this test, and be surprised. You'll be amazed. You're going to be amazed what God does. Not everyone's going to take me up on it. Not everyone's going to take God up on it. But you will be amazed. Trust me when I tell you that. I've seen it over and over again. All right, I'm sorry. I'll try to be as loud as Ed. Which I heard Ed, his voice. He's pretty loud. Okay, Proverbs 27, verse 7. The rich rule over the poor, and the borrower is what? A slave to the lender. I don't know about you, but I'm not into slavery.
Come on.
Okay? And I think we need to be emancipated from that slavery. God's people especially should be emancipated. You hear me in the back? Okay, we live in a debtor society. Our economy is based on debt. But we presume upon the future whenever we borrow money. Now, I got to tell you a couple things. Something I wanted to mention in the last session that you know, I was talking to a brother who's from the Bronx. I was raised in the Bronx. And if you know anything about the Bronx, it's a little rough. And my parents were low middle class Cuban immigrants, uneducated. We grew up we didn't have any Cokes, we didn't have any chips, we didn't have cereal. My mother used to say, Americans are stupid because they buy all this junk. And it's not even that good for you, and it's expensive. So we didn't have any of that stuff. We had plenty of milk, we had plenty of rice, and more rice. We had plenty of beans, we had eggs, we had, all the staples. So I didn't know we were poor. I just thought everybody lived the way I lived. But I learned some of my greatest lessons about money from my mother. She was very smart, very uneducated, though. When she would write me a letter, I'd have to figure out where the periods were supposed to go. She couldn't punctuate. She didn't know how to write very well. But she was very good with money. And she used to, and really, for all the education that I have, I learned everything I know about managing money from my mother. She died about 20 years ago. She was an amazing person. And when I was in law school, I started to forget the things that my mother taught me. And I started to listen to what other people were telling me. Now, you're going to get out of law school, and the banks will willing to make you loans for whatever you want. You can buy the house you want. And I was starting to buy into it, and actually I bought into it a little bit to my demise. And it's like we're the children of God, right? But we live in the land of the Philistines. We start adopting the Philistines' ways, and we start having problems. So you got to remember whose you are and what you are. The problem with debt is interest. It's the biggest problem. The other problem with it is you got to pay it back. The banks ask me all the time, bankers, Greg, can we loan you any money? I go, not unless I don't want to pay it back. I have to pay it back. I don't want it. That's the problem, because we easy to spend money that you borrow. It's hard to pay it back.
That's right.
And you're making a commitment about something that you really don't know if you're going to be able to. I mean, you're relatively confident you will, but you're just presuming. I mean, we've been through so many tough times here in the last 10, 12, 15 years. In the late 90s, mid to late 90s, I was following all these principles, and I was doing everything I've been telling everybody. House was paid off, everything. I'm doing great, and I started investing in the stock market in 1995. You know anything about the stock market? That's when it started to go up. And my mother left me a little money. I had a little money. I put it in there. Everything started to boom, boom, boom. All of a sudden, by the end of 99, my account was so high, I was intoxicated. I mean, literally, I was looking at the market every 5 minutes. I was giving even off the growth of my stock portfolio, because I had this conviction. I was about to speak to the Atlanta church on this whole thing, and I went, oh my gosh, the growth of your lands. I said, this is like my land, stock market. And all these things are growing. So I started getting stock, and I thought, and I made the mistake of thinking that as long as I give a lot, I will not become greedy. Big mistake. Because what happened is came so fast that I started to really put my security in my securities instead of in God. And it was my sin, and I didn't even see it. It kind of blindsided me. And I started to resent my job and my work, and I thought, gosh, I'm going to retire at 49, and I'm going to speak everywhere and tell everybody how to do it. I'm the poster child of how to do it. And God allowed something very, very significant in my life to happen. He allowed me to lose a lot of money. And when I say a lot of money, I don't want to tell you how much. It was so painful that I felt, coming from the background I came from, where you don't waste money, where you don't throw away money, where my mother valued money, everything was about money. Coming from that background, I felt like the worst person in the world. I felt like I let my family down. I felt like, you think I'm kidding? I got clinically depressed to the point where I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep. I don't wish this on anybody. I'd get up in the middle of the night at 3 in the morning shaking because I was so depressed. And I prayed for God to take my life because I felt like I wasn't worth it, And, excuse me.
That's real. That's real.
I got to the point where I had to get on some antidepressants because I couldn't even face people. I couldn't even look at people. My clients kept asking me, "Are you okay, Greg? You don't seem well." I said, "No, I've got a stomach ache." I was going home early. I was in the bathroom all the time. I thought I had cancer. I didn't know what was going. It was very, very scary time. And I started taking these antidepressants for a little while just to help me through this. And I was scheduled to speak for the Hope Health Corps in LA Memorial Day weekend, the year 2002. And I thought to myself in March of that year, I said, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? I have no confidence. No confidence. I couldn't even look at people. It was like looking at a frail old man. And I thought, so I just didn't think that much about it. And then after I got done with tax season, I started seeing this counselor who did some hypnotherapy with me, which is not voodoo, okay? It's getting you very, very quiet, very, very still, and talk to your subconscious. And help you kind of reach your core principles. And he said something to me in one of these sessions. He said, here you are, an attorney and a CPA, and you are afraid that you're not going to be able to support your family. He says, Greg, you come from a family of survivors. You are a survivor. If they let you in a deserted island by yourself, you will not only survive, but you will thrive. I'm telling you, never forget that, because that rang a bell for me. I said, that is absolutely true. My mother's side of the family never got past elementary school. All did very well. Nobody ever told them they couldn't do something. They built houses. They have jewelry stores. They're all very wealthy. And they're just very positive people. They just, Cubans... That generation of Cubans, they're like, they didn't know any fear. They just went after it. Came from Cuba without a penny. After Castro took everything and they came with just a shirt on their back. And they made it happen, And I thought, wow, that is my heritage. That's where I come from. And if they can do it, I can certainly do it with a college degree and a law degree. Wow. So the things I learned, that was such an important lesson. And so when I went to... Interestingly, I started seeing this counselor April 16th, the day after tax season was over. And I just worked out, I had to right after. I said, I got to start. And then I saw him like 6 times. By the end of May, I was feeling so good. I said, can I get off these meds? He goes, yeah, just wean yourself off. I was feeling so good, and so I'm getting ready to go to LA to speak. And I shared this story. And I spoke for about 2 hours, this group of doctors and all the medical people. And Henry Kramer had me come as before the whole thing started. And I just shared it. I just told everybody exactly my thing. I just laid it all out there. And everybody, seemed like almost everybody could relate to it. And it was like this cathartic time that we all had together. And it was fantastic. And it was so empowering for me to share my sin. When you share your sin, you allow God to use it to teach you, to take your weaknesses and really teach you and help other people. So I share it with other people going through tough times. They look at me, they see, he's a lawyer, CPA, he rides a Ducati, all this stuff, and he's never experienced anything bad. How can he relate to me? I didn't go to college, I have all these problems. I can relate, guys, I can relate. I relate better than most of you. I can relate to that. So my mother taught me most credit problems are not about what you make. It's about how you manage what you make. It's about poor management. It's not insufficient income. it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter what you make. My mother never made more than minimum wage. And when she died 20 years ago, she had 4 paid-up rental properties in Miami. Wow. It was yielding $5,000 a month. $60,000 a year. Woman, 20 years ago. These properties at that time were worth $600,000. How did she do it? She didn't waste a penny. I mean, she would put money, and she'd try to pay things off as quickly as she could. And I watched that. She would go across town to save 3 cents a pound on ham. I watched it. We grew up where her friends would have kids about our age, and they have a pair of jeans that they weren't using anymore, and my mother would take them and say, yeah, my son can wear them. So first year, jeans were a little big. Second year, they were just right. Third year, a little tight. She had no shame, no pride about taking stuff. I mean, why not? Perfectly good pair of sneakers. Save her $50, $80, whatever, I mean, so I didn't think about it, I didn't think about the labels on anything. I just didn't think like that. I thought like an immigrant. And that is something that is a really positive thing to think. If you think like an immigrant, think about what do immigrants do? They come to this country. Why are they here? Because they want to leave wherever they were, a lot of them. Because my parents left Cuba because there was no opportunity in Cuba. Came to the U.S., went to New York, because they wanted to leave that. So you think they cared what the people next door thought about them? I mean, who cares? The Jones? Who cares? They didn't care about the Joneses. I didn't know who the Joneses are. They were interested in trying to save money, trying to build a better life for themselves and a better life for their kids. Wow. That's what immigrants do. What happens to Americans? We grow up in this great country. Everybody has, 8 years old, the kids are on their cell phones, their iPhones, all this stuff. So we just get accustomed to it, and we think it's our God-given right to have this stuff. And so we see all of our classmates who graduated from college. They all got their big mortgages. They all got their car payments. They all got credit cards. They all owe $10,000 or more in credit cards and $100,000 in student loans. And we think, well, that's just the way it is. It's not the way it is. Think like an immigrant. My mother said to me one time, when I moved to Miami, we purchased some furniture in North Carolina right before we came. I didn't have the money, okay, but I ordered it, and I thought, well, I'll get the money. Well, I get to Miami, furniture's about to come, I needed $1,500, and I asked my mother if I could borrow it. Big mistake. My mother, borrowing money from my mother is worse than borrowing money from mom. I mean, she wanted to know everything I did with my money. She said, what do you give the church? I go, none of your business. Oh, it is my business. You owe me money. I go, oops, yeah, you're right. And she said to me, this was one of those defining moments in my life. When you get to be, the older you get, the more you have defining moments, and they're really good. Let God use them. So she said to me, Greg, here you are, an attorney and a CPA. Your wife works, you work, you have no children, and you can't even make it from paycheck to paycheck. And that was the truth. I was running out at the end of the first week and borrowing money from my friends to get to the next week. She said, why can't you act like you just came from Cuba? Like all these people in Miami who just got here from Cuba, who have 3 kids, cannot speak English, and they somehow managed to survive on less than half of what you make. So why can't you pretend that's all you make and live on that? I thought I was so smart, and here this uneducated woman tells me this, my mother, and I go, it's so simple that it's elusive. I didn't see it, and I go, wow. I was ashamed. I'm telling you the truth. I'm so ashamed. We got out of our nice apartment down in Kendall. She had this little 4-unit apartment building, tiny, in Little Havana, now Little Nicaragua. We had drug dealers for neighbors. She said, I will rent you one of those apartments. And of course, she wasn't going to give it to me. Yes, you have to know my mother. So he said, I'll rent it to you. I'll give you a deal. I'll rent it to you. And it was closer to downtown, and it was a little rough. But you know what? We did it. We were thankful to go there. And it took me a year and a half to pay off that $1,500 I borrowed, not from her, actually. I borrowed from somebody else. It took me a year and a half, and I thought I'd never get out of it. And people would come to our little apartment and go, oh, And I said, what are you ooh-ohing about? This is our home. This is where we live right now. Okay, it's clean. You don't have to worry about it. We open it up to everybody, and I will have the last laugh on this one. I said it's temporary. Okay, it's temporary. All the things we're talking about is a matter of temporarily doing without, so that you can have everything paid off and live much better later. It's always easier to get used to having more than it is to get used to having less. So if we voluntarily choose to have less in order to be able to pay off all the junk that we have accumulated and all the debt we've accumulated, then you can have what you really want. Anybody here take the Dave Ramsey course? I highly, highly recommend it. I've been doing this program for a long time, and I've read one of Dave Ramsey's books and said, oh my gosh, this guy's saying the same thing I've been saying. He's already done it. Easy course. I mean, please, I encourage you guys to take it. It is a phenomenal course, especially husbands and wives. Take it together. All right, so why do we go into debt? Because we want to enjoy it now, pay for it later. It's easy monthly payments. We assume we'll always earn at least as much as we earn when we borrow the money. Or we assume the asset collateralizing the debt will always be worth at least the amount of the debt, and you can always sell it. Well, guess what? A few years ago, everybody thought that with real estate, right? And you get ready to sell it. Oh, but it's worth more. I heard people say, I have all this equity. I said, well, what do you do with that equity, schmequity? Can you sell it? Can't sell it. Nobody's buying. In a lot of cases, people coming to the closing table with cash to pay for what was not being paid by the sale. So that's a presumption. That's a presumption on your future. It's not smart. Okay. Now I'm not telling you anything I'm telling you here. I'm not telling you this is sin. If you're in debt, you're a sinner. I'm not saying any of that. Okay. I'm just saying, look, let's be smarter than the Philistines we live with.
Amen.
Let's be smarter. Let's figure out what it is that we want and stop going along with the rest of the crowd, with the lemmings off the cliff. Let's go the other way. Let's be like a salmon and swim upstream. And let's do it differently so that we can get there. Dave Ramsey says, live like nobody else so that you can live like nobody else. Live like nobody else first, because that means pay things off, do without, get rid of your cable, get rid of this, get rid of that. Pay everything off. Not so you can live a Spartan lifestyle and say, oh, I'm such a great Christian. I don't have anything. No, so that you can pay off everything and then you'll be able to live and have whatever you want. If you know me at all, you know that I don't believe that there's anything we can't do or we can't have. It's wrong to have a certain kind of car or anything. I believe you give God the first fruits, you share it with others, and everything's okay. Our Father is a generous God. He's an extravagant God. It's okay, whatever it is you want to have. If it starts to grab a hold of your heart, then it causes you a problem. And God may take it away, like He took away a lot of my money. But it's all good. He took care of me. That doesn't mean I got it all back. I just mean I'm a much better person. Anyway,
Amen.
When we borrow money, it limits our choices later in life. Think about it. If you had how many people have a house mortgage? Raise your hand. Okay, if your house mortgage was paid off, just envision that for a minute. What would that mean to your lifestyle? All of a sudden, you have an extra $1,000, $1,500, $2,000, whatever it is. It's like getting a raise. If your car is paid off, what does that mean for you? You think, I don't want to limit my choices, because if you have everything paid off and you decide, I want to take 2 months off and go help the brothers and sisters in India, or in the Caribbean, or in the Philippines, or whatever, you can make that choice. Most people don't have that choice because they go, I have to work. I owe, so off to work I go. They have to work to pay their debt. And just because everybody's doing it doesn't mean it's a good thing. We talk about good debt versus bad debt. People say, what's good debt? Well, in my way of looking at things, there really isn't any good debt. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't go into debt ever. You're going to school, the only way you can do it, I had to get student loans because my parents couldn't afford to put me through law school. And I paid it off as quickly as I could. But that's good. That's okay. That's good debt. But think that through. If you're a student in college, don't just assume because you're in college you should borrow whatever they're willing to loan you. I've talked to parents, clients of mine who would say, they have a daughter who wants to go to Emory. And there's one couple that I know, disciples for a long time. She said, there's the youngest daughter. She's the only disciple. She's just a great kid. And she said, this is a number of years ago, she said, well, she wants to go to Emory, and the ministry there really wants her. I said, okay. And he's a doctor. He said, you can't afford it. He said, I can't? I said, no, you can't. You just can't afford it. I said, you can afford to contribute $5,000 a year to her education. Now, if you want to work for the rest of your life to pay for those student loans and die like that, that's your business. I'm not going to make a value judgment about it, but if you want to be smart, is the church wants us for bed. Is the church willing to pay for it? No. Okay. Well, then have her look around. This kid was such a good kid, such a great heart. She said, okay, Dad. And she started looking at other places. University of Florida gave her a full scholarship with money to blow. $2,500 a year to spend on whatever she wants. Paid for everything. And so because she didn't decide, I have to go to Emory because the ministry in Emory really wants me, blah, blah, blah. She went to Florida. Florida had a great ministry. She did great. And then she went to graduate school, and it's a great, great girl. Let's see. So to me, debt is one of those things, you can't buy a house without it, usually. Very few people have the cash, just write a check. But, there's a lot of things we go into debt for because we think it's okay. And I'm not saying none of this is okay, but buying a car. For years, I bought used cars. And I didn't put them on a payment plan. Because what happens to people, and I see this in my clients, they do these payment plans and they think, well, I have 27 more payments to make. I go, well, you can always add money to those payments and shorten that. Oh, no, I got 27. In 27 months, this car will be done. The problem with that is usually at the end of that car payment, you get used to making that car payment, $500, $600, whatever it is, a month. And then at the end of the car payment, everything inside of you is going, I need a car payment. I don't have a car payment. What am I going to do? I don't have a car payment. And they say, I want a new car. And the auto industry they know that, and that's why they give you 60 months, 72 months, 84 months. It's ridiculous. And I had a client a long time ago, about 20-some years ago, who came to me. He was a professor at the university, head of his department. He was making $60,000 a year, and he had also co-authored a book that was used in all these elementary school systems all over the country. He co-authored it with 20 other authors. His annual royalties from that book were $300,000. Wow. So he comes to me, and he just moved to Athens, and he wanted some help with the whole picture. And I said, so you have any car payments? He goes, yeah, I got two. And I still remember these numbers. Don't ask me how. He owed $550 a month in his car payments. And he had $300,000 in his bond account. And he had a $130,000 mortgage on a $160,000 house. And I said to him, if you're going to work with me, you're going to pay off these cars. He goes, what? I said, yeah, you're going to take that money that's in the bond account and you pay off these cars. I said, because I don't work with, you have no business owing on a car when you got the money sitting there. I don't work with people that don't. Wow. And I told him, you're gonna everything inside of you, you're gonna scream to have a car payment for the next 3 months, but it's like detoxing. And then all of a sudden you go, and it feels good. You go, oh, okay. And when you buy a car, this guy was making great money. I said, buy a car, pay cash. Just write a check, okay? And so the next, about 8 months later, he comes to my office, this new Mazda RX-7. He goes, Greg, wrote a check. And a year later, he comes with an Acura NSX, $70,000 car. He goes, Greg, check it out. Wrote a check. This guy totally got it. At the time I started working with him, I said, now I also want to, let's pay down your house mortgage. He goes, I don't want to put any more money in my house. I said, are we talking about adding to your house? I'm not talking about adding anything to your house. I want to pay off the debt. And I said, okay, I get it. You can't do it. Okay, let's at least pay $30,000. Let's refinance. We did that. He finally got it. A couple years later, he paid it off. And this guy today is in such great shape, and he has more toys than you can think of. But he got the concept. And I've had disciples encourage them to get a car, buy a used car. Buy somebody else's new car from 3 years ago. Don't borrow the money on a 36-month payment plan. Try to do it. Even if you do, try to pay it off as quickly as you can. And what will happen is when you get used to not having a car payment, you will never, ever have a car payment again. Because it's like, car payment. I'll save my money. Or you get it, you have a borrow it for a little bit, for half of it maybe, and then try to pay off as quickly as you can. Because it just bugs you to owe that money. Okay. Verse 37:21. I'm sorry. Psalms 37:21 says, "The wicked borrows and does not repay, but the righteous is gracious in giving." Proverbs 21:17 says, "He who loves pleasure will become poor. Whoever loves wine and oil will never be rich." I'm not saying you can't have those things, but if that's what you love and you sacrifice by borrowing money, you'll never have anything. And again, you got to put God first. No matter how much debt you're in. That's the problem we get into. We get into this point and we go, oh man, I'm not giving but I don't have the money to give a tithe. Well, you gotta figure it out. You got to figure out what you got to get rid of. You got to think outside the box. Think, what can we do with that? And I'm not saying you have to do this, but I'm saying if you really want to be there, if you want to experience the joy I'm talking about, figure it out. We're smart people. Resourceful people. Figure it out. You can do it. Living within our means. What does that mean? Ability to make the payments? No. That's what it means to the creditor. Oh, you can make these payments. To be able to pay it in full? Not necessarily, but I think so on a lot of things. What are your means? How do you know what you can afford? So getting out of debt, what do? You begin by being honest with yourself. Don't blame your parents. Don't blame your job. Don't blame your kids. Don't blame anybody for the debt you're in. Go, okay, I did this. I'm in charge of my life. Be accountable for your own choices. Take full responsibility. I mean, I've had brothers get out of ministry and they'll say, I got all this debt because I was in the ministry. And I go, excuse me? And what do you mean by that? You tell me that's an excuse, man. You see things. Oh, my kids are in big soccer camps and all that. That's why I'm in debt. That's your choice. My parents, we didn't have that choice in my house because my mother's mine. We don't spend money on that stuff. You got to know what you owe and to whom you owe and what it is. As I counsel people, most people have no clue what they really owe. I mean, this is, so if you're feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm the only one, no. You're in the vast majority of people. They don't know what they owe. They don't know the interest rate on what they owe. They don't really know what it's going to take to pay that stuff off. And so what I tell people in these conferences, I say, if you had a very wealthy guy who said, if you will tell me exactly what you owe, I will give you that money paid off. And most of us guess that. I say, you're going to miss out. That guy would have paid off everything he had. So you got to know what you owe, because if you don't know, you're never gonna get out of it. It's just kind of unconscious. We buy things unconsciously. We do things unconsciously. We got to list those debts, the payoff, the interest rate, the monthly payment. Write it down and look at it. Stare at the abyss. Look at it. It's ugly. Just like when you're trying to lose weight and you go, I don't want to look at that scale. Look at it. Picture in your mind what it is you want to look like. And I'm not kidding you. When it comes to debt, if you will picture in your mind, envision being out of debt. Think about it. You have your list of debts. You go, I am going to be out of debt. And you start thinking about how to do it. What happens is when God blesses you with extra money from your Aunt Nina or from whatever, or a raise or whatever, you, instead of thinking, oh, great, E-M-E-T, extra money for extra things. You think God, and you think debt. The problem with paying off debt is not fun.
Yeah.
It's like, that's boring, right? You got some money, what you do with it? Paying off debt. We're excited to pay off debt. I got to the point where I love paying off debt. I love paying my house paid off, my beach house paid off. I'm like, super aggressive. My bankers know I'm neurotic about debt. I'm what they call a debt Nazi. Can't stand it. People say, well, it's 0%. I go, nothing's really 0%. If you go to that car store and you say, if I wrote a check, how much would it be? You find out it's about $3,000 less. So what are you really paying? It's a game. 0% financing. And then you're really stuck. Because then if you pay it off early, you're not gaining anything. Don't do that. If you're going to have to borrow the money, we'll borrow it and pay interest. Say, I don't want the 0% thing. I want the lower deal. And then try to pay it off as quickly as you can. Learn to hate owing money. Learn to hate it so much, like a list of enemies in your life. You pray about it. You envision it. You will get there. Most people don't know that because they just don't think. It's too painful to think about it. And so when 10 years later, and you gotta understand, some of you guys are really young, you think, wow, I got all this time, Garcia, you're almost 60, it's so much time to pay off everything. I'm telling you, it comes on you quick. It was like yesterday when I was baptized. My kids are in their mid to late 20s. It happens so quickly. And if you're unconscious about it, you will be 60 and still have all that debt and more. Because what happens to us, and I was sitting next to a guy in the plane coming here yesterday, and we were talking about this, and I was doing this program, and he said, the problem most people have, they spend what they make plus. Where do we get that plus? MasterCard, Visa, home equity lines. So you're never living on what you make. I tell people, did you always make what you're making now? Well, no. Okay. Did you survive? Obviously you did, right? So do like my mother said. Pretend you live on what you were making 10 years ago and live on that. Then you take the rest to pay off the debt. And it's temporary. It's maybe a year, maybe 5 years. I had a brother in another town who came to me, and he's a doctor and not very good with his money. The bank gave him a line of credit. This is years ago, $130,000. And he didn't really need it, but he used it, to kind of augment his lifestyle. And so he calls me one day and says, Greg, I need your help. He said, I owe $130,000. I have nothing to show for it. He wasn't making enough money. And I said, this is a bitter pill. Right? This is going to be a bitter, fat, nasty pill. If you're willing to take it, I'll help you. But if you're not, I'm not going to work with you. He says, okay. So I said, it's going to take you 5 years to pay this off. But when you do, you will never get in this situation again. He said, okay. He got to the point where he said, I'm going to examine every expense I have in my practice. Everything I do. We've got a couple doctors here, right? He told me, he said, he's a family practice doctor. He said, I need to buy a proctoscope. And I can buy the short scope or the long scope. And I said, well, how much is the short scope? How much is the long scope? How much do you make? We just analyzed it. Everything he did that way. He got very, very conscious of what he did. And he paid off all his debt in 3.5 years. And he's making now 3 times what he was making then, and actually has money put away. And he's in his early 60s. It takes being conscious. Don't fall asleep at the wheel here. Most of us are asleep at the wheel. We want lunch, we go pay for lunch. We go to Starbucks, we get a latte, get a little egg sandwich or whatever, a muffin, $5, $6. The way my mother, when I grew up, sack lunch. It's a whole lot cheaper. Dave Ramsey said, he calls it the latte factor. Cut out that latte every day, it's like $5 a day you save. I mean, it's just those little choices we make. We're going to get with somebody for discipling, so what do? We go to a restaurant. And we spend way more than that food is worth, and way more than the experience is worth. It's much more intimate and meaningful experience in the privacy of your home, where you don't have the little girl. Everything okay? You need anything else? It's. My wife and I, we got so convicted about this when I was in Miami. We realized that we cannot go out to eat more than once a month. This was back in 1981. And we'd have brothers coming in, speaking, and the brothers would ask, hey, Greg, you and Kay come over and join us? We're going to go out to dinner. And I'd say, we went out to dinner already this month. I said, well, come on, man, you're an attorney and a CPA. Yeah, so. And I said, well, we really want you to come. I said, well, I'll be back here when you guys come back and we'll have coffee. Or better yet, if you want me there that badly, if you'll pay for it, I'll be there. I mean, learn to think like that and think outside the box. You don't have to buy half the things we buy. We don't have to buy, And again, it's not because they're wrong to have. Just I want you to have them. You want that beautiful dress? Doggone it, I want you to have that dress and sequins and whatever the heck you want. But wait till you can afford it. Pay off all this junk, and then you may not even want it then. Okay, I am running out of time, like real fast. How's everybody doing? Ready to go? A little bit longer? Okay. All right, you got to make your hit list of debts you want to pay off. Tackle the smaller one first. Literally, write down everything you owe. Everybody, everything, interest rate, the whole thing. And say it's a list of 20 things. I had a couple in the church in Athens. I did this little 20-minute homily, if you will, on debt. And they said, we want to get with you. He was an engineer. She's a doctor. And they had a bunch of, I didn't know what they had until they came to me and I saw they had a bunch of little credit card debt, this and that. Nothing terrible. And she had just gotten a bonus check from her boss. And she didn't open it. She wasn't going to open it until they came to see me. So I look at all this debt, and so we start organizing it into what needs to be paid off first. I said, okay, I got this bonus check, and I'm opening it now. She thought it was going to be $3,000 or $4,000. It was $13,000. I said, wow, this is great. And he said, what do I do with it? I said, well, what do you want to do with it? Can I spend some of it? I said, it's your money. You can spend whatever you want. I said, but what are you talking about? How much do you want to spend? He goes, like $3,000? I said, it's up to you, but if it were me, I'd spend $500, but the rest towards debt. He goes, okay. And so I said, look at this, and you can be completely out of this. All this short-term consumer debt in 3 to 6 months. And then we started attacking student loan debt. She had a medical school loan of $150,000. So we're going to attack that one, and we're going to pay that one off. And then we're going to pay off your house. So about 6 months later, I see him in church, and he points to his watch. And I go, get a new watch? He goes, no. Paid off all my short-term debt. I said, come on, brother. I mean, they got so into this stuff. They honored the Lord. They get that down. And then they got so into this stuff, they paid off everything, like a matter of a few years. And they were excited about it. When you can get excited about paying off debt, you're getting there. Okay? It's when you resent it and you're not there. Keep working. Because the thing is, if you can get excited about it, I get excited about it because that means I'm going to have a lot more to spend later. Because all that stuff is paid off. And we can do what we want. Decide to apply every dollar after honoring God with the first fruits of all that comes into your possession to paying down your debt. And let's stop adding to our debt. I see most people, their credit card is their emergency fund. I mean, we're just treading water. We're not paying off anything. We're just making the minimum payments. I know people that owe $100,000 in credit cards. You know what the interest rate on those things are? In some cases, at 27%. You know what the bank is paying? 0.6. I mean, it's like loan shark interest rates. It's terrible. And you spend so much money on just paying that. So attack it. Put all the wants on hold for a while. Anything you don't absolutely have to have. So get your kids together. Get the family together. Say, guys, we're on a mission. It's Desert Storm. We're going to attack this thing. But we will come out alive the other end of this thing. And we're going to have a much better life. So stop adding to your debt. Discretionary income. Figure out what is really within your discretion. You take what's coming in, you look at what absolutely has to be paid. Okay? Mortgage, rent, of course, tithe, all the things that have to be paid. And then you look at the difference. That's what you have a choice about. And that includes food, eating out, everything. That's discretionary. You decide, okay, out of that discretionary money, and it's maybe pretty depressing. You say, okay, so what can we do to get out of it? Out of that discretionary money, that's what you have to live on that, utilities and food and everything, and try to squeeze out whatever you can to pay extra on those debts. So you attack the little ones first because it's encouraging. You see that item, that list of 12 items, and you say, okay, this is $300. I'm going to pay that off. You go, wow, that was exciting. Then you go, I'm down to 11. And then it kind of builds like a snowball. Dave Ramsey talks about that. And I came to my own conclusion about that before he said it. But it's true. It gets you momentum. And then you start getting so excited about paying off that you're like a heat-seeking missile. And that's what I'm trying to do to you guys. I'm trying to set coordinates here. And I'll tell you, I've done this in many places, and I'll have people a year later saying, Greg, I'm completely out of consumer debt. I owe $30,000 when you were here. I owe nothing. I go, whoa, how'd you do that? And man, I just got convicted and convinced and decided that's what I want to do. I want to stop living like a Philistine. Start living like a child of the King. Amen. You have to have laser focus about this stuff. And celebrate your victories. Like that you hit a point where you paid off all this. Okay, hey, do something fun. Do the happy dance. Go do something fun. Go out, spend the night in a hotel. Whatever, But don't go crazy. Vacations are not a God-given right, okay? You can do them cheap or you can do them expensive. You go to Disney World, you can spend $4,000 or $6,000. Forget about that. Okay, well, I'm done. I'm really not done, but that's all I got time for.